On our long list of things that we have to be mad about in the world, out of nowhere came a different kind of story that momentarily took our minds off of police shootings of unarmed black teenagers, figuring out who's actually responsible for creating ISIS, and why we had to lose Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert in the same miserable year. For several days, the world had a new person to hate, a previously fairly obscure Minneapolis dentist named Walter Palmer. Palmer actually had enjoyed a certain celebrity among big game hunters, but last month he mistakenly killed one of the oldest, most rare, and most beloved lions in the world, Zimbabwe's rare black-maned lion, Cecil. And though Palmer has since apologized and said that he just didn't know that Cecil had been lured off of a game preserve and was wearing a tracking collar, they wounded him and then 2 days later managed to finish killing Cecil. And then Palmer saw the tracking collar, cut it off, and hid it in a tree. He was so horrified by what he had done that reportedly he then turned to his guides and said, "I want to kill a really big elephant tomorrow. Can I kill an elephant tomorrow?" It's not that anyone that thought killing Cecil was more important than recent human tragedies. It was that killing Cecil made no sense at all. There is no friction in Minneapolis between the dentist community and the lion community. He had to go halfway across the globe, spend a ton of money, and then lure a harmless lion out into the open to shoot it. It was an obscene act to satisfy a nearly incomprehensible and arguably mentally perverted need to kill a rare, indeed an endangered, beautiful, and beloved, majestic animal. It is an obscenity of excess. Now, there's a market for rare meats around the world. I don't know how tired you have to be of eating beef and chicken and fish to feel like you need to have a bear steak or eat part of a lion or a rhino. I haven't felt any such appetite, I guarantee you. There are, of course, those who see little difference between killing a cow or killing a lion, though I am sympathetic with people who are vegetarians for reasons of conscience. I do think that there is a matter of self-preservation involved. For all the fear and hype about sharks and Ebola and ISIS, in the past year, sharks have killed one American died of Ebola, one American has died at the hands of ISIS, but cows have killed 22 Americans. Let's do the math. Yeah. I'm doing my part to keep Americans safe. But there is a serious moral issue here, and one that's not always easy even to define. It's difficult to comprehend. Spiritual people of every world religion have gone through phases of emphasizing self-denial, of living an ascetic life without possessions and a full embrace of poverty. But others have seen the accumulation of wealth as a sign of God's blessings. This is true in Judaism, Christianity, Islam. It is a debate that goes on within spiritual communities. But the Buddha taught that the middle way is more sane, and he had tried both. Born as a prince, had lived an ascetic life, nearly starved to death. But he said that to live a more balanced life, eschewing the extremes of either asceticism or of excess, is a more human way to live. And you know me, I'm not one to praise moderation most of the time, especially when it comes to our passion for justice or our commitment to radical compassion. But when it comes to our appetites, the middle way is clearly the path that we're looking for. Capitalism often seems to teach that there are no boundaries. There's an element to our society that seems to believe that more is always better. More is always to be desired, to the point that we actually have a television show about hoarders, people that keep things that are even of relatively no value whatsoever, who cannot throw things away. Our appetites for food or sex or money, things, power. These appetites can run over us and turn decent human beings into monsters. Like a lot of my peers, I've struggled with my weight for most of my adult life. I don't feel like I'm a bad person, but I know when I try to fit these hips into one of those old theater seats at the Galois or the Landers, whether I'm a bad person or not, I'm a big person, and I would be more healthy and I would be more comfortable if I were smaller. Now, not to make this too personal, and certainly not to invite unsolicited dieting advice. Just in case you don't know it, unsolicited dieting advice is justifiable homicide. Never just walk up to someone and start telling them how to lose weight. But I have found when I diet that I have to concentrate on the difference between wanting to eat because I'm hungry and wanting to eat for sheer entertainment, for the pleasure of foods. I made the decision, just because we are trying to advocate for health, to stop buying donut holes. And then one of our members decided that he would buy. Now, no one eats a donut hole because you're hungry and you need fuel, right? You eat a donut hole because they're wonderful. That it is the distinct pleasure of eating it, regardless of whether your body actually needs any fuel. For a lot of us in the middle class, we can afford to buy virtually anything that we want to eat. So we have to make a conscious decision to eat smarter and not simply to consume because economically we can. We did not evolve in the presence of an abundance of food. We evolved in food scarcity. And so our evolutionary nature compels us to eat when food is present, but our decision to try to be more healthy and to be smarter forces us to make more deliberative decisions about how we consume. One of the most helpful continuing education events that we've held at the university where I sometimes teach was when we invited the poverty specialist, Ruby Payne, to come and do a seminar for us. She described the different ways in which different economic classes approach something as basic as family dinner. After dinner, a poor father will ask his children, "Did you get enough?" A middle-class father will ask his children, "Did you like it?" And a wealthy father might ask his children, "Did you enjoy the experience?" For those whose lives are often marked with food insecurity, just making sure that your children are fed is a source of anxiety. Those who are not especially afraid of hunger per se are concerned with making sure that their children are enjoying the basics of life. The wealthy might not really enjoy even excellent food if it is not served in an environment that is also aesthetically pleasing. All of these things have to do with how we have trained our appetites. I eat beef and chicken, but I would take no pleasure in going onto a farm and personally killing the animals that will eventually end up in a skillet on my stove. I don't understand the pleasure people get out of hunting, but I do recognize it as being a part of how humans function in the food chain. And so I don't judge people who hunt for food. Though hunting endangered species, or even entirely impractical sources of meat, is an extreme appetite that we shouldn't be afraid to label as being an evil in society. It is sinful in the purest sense of that word. It's extreme to the point of mental illness. The Desert Fathers, the ascetic monks who lived in the Alexandrian desert in the early centuries of the Christian movement, sought to gain control of their appetites. And that's what asceticism really is all about. It's so that your appetites don't control you. And one of the Desert Fathers said that if you never completely satisfy your thirst for water, then you don't crave wine. If you're never totally full of bread, then you don't feel a need for meat. Many of our appetites do not have a natural stopping place if we don't make a conscious decision that we're not going to let our appetites rule us. We have to decide that we want to be in charge of our own lives. The Apostle Paul spoke critically in the 3rd chapter of Philippians of those whose God is their belly, people who've lost all impulse control, who never willingly say no to any of their appetites. A spiritual weakness facilitated in modern times, quite frankly, by credit cards, by payday loans that allow people to indulge themselves in the present moment in something they ultimately simply cannot afford. Our society rarely questions our appetites and, in fact, encourages indulgence, excess, hoarding, greed. The liquor industry runs ads telling people to drink responsibly, but they know that 4 out of 5 alcoholic beverages purchased in the United States is purchased by an alcoholic. If they only had responsible drinkers, 80% of the beer and liquor businesses would go out of business. Casinos post signs encouraging people, if they have a gambling problem, to get help. But the truth is, casinos record everyone who comes in. They know everyone who's in the building. They know how much money you've lost, and they know how long you've been there. If they had the remotest interest in keeping people out of casinos who have gambling addictions, they could simply turn them away at the door. They have the technology. They know that they're there. But the truth behind those signs is they know that if it weren't for gambling addicts, most of those casinos would go bankrupt. And I'm no prude. I'm not opposed. I am opposed to censorship in almost all forms. But I know that very many people find that they quickly move from being occasional viewers of pornography to being fired for watching porn at work. People that I've had in counseling that lost their jobs because pornography was found on their computer, it wasn't because there were a dozen videos or pictures. It's because there was 10,000 that they simply couldn't stop the addiction. WebMD estimates that there are nearly 450 million pornography websites on the web. That's 1 for every 6 people who have access to the internet. Clearly, this is not just couples trying to spice up their love life. This is a social addiction that can hardly be seen as anything short of a malignancy. We have advertisements beamed at us night and day through every form of media. We are encouraged to buy, to consume, to indulge, and to never think of the consequences of this consumption to the earth, how our excess creates scarcity in other people's lives, or even how indulging in certain appetites can create an obscene and abusive industry where the people on the other side of the screen are victims without number. We have to be smarter than the marketplace. We have to be more decisive than the alcohol industry, the gambling industry, the sex industry, and even the automobile and the clothing industry. We have to decide to live sane lives that are balanced between absolute scarcity and obscenity. As Gandhi said, in matters of conscience, you cannot depend on majority opinions. You cannot just flow through life. Only dead fish only swim with the stream. You have to be willing to resist the culture. There is no substitute for critical thinking, for self-examination, and for choosing to lead a sober and meaningful life that does not exploit the poor and does not exploit the earth and does not exploit animals. Somewhere between eating only salads and indulging in an appetite for killing endangered species, there is a safe place where all of us can live.
You've been watching a progressive Christian video from the Community Christian Church of Springfield, Missouri. We encourage our viewers to donate to our efforts in feeding the homeless and hungry of our community. Write to us at reverenddray@aol.com for more information.